Hey friends, we're picking up where we left off last week with what we're calling a Minnesota Mayhem Part 2. It's interesting that after uncovering about $20 billion in fraud, that now conveniently the focus has shifted to bad ICE agents and terrorizing legitimate law enforcement efforts in an effort to change the optics. We're going to talk about what's going on up there, a tragic second life that was taken unnecessarily. We're talking about the importance of the rule of law and how we can solve this problem easily if we would just get cooperation from government officials on the left. But anyway, we'll talk about that and a whole lot of other things on our podcast today. You won't want to miss it.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in once again as we dive into the mayhem that is surrounding us. Especially, I'm calling it Minnesota Mayhem because it has a specific location where this mayhem seems to foster. And we were just talking, like what is there to talk about on the national level? So much again. And I'm going to be the rabid radical right today because I'm a little frustrated and angry. Pastor Andrew is going to be the voice of reason and common sense, Holy Spirit led. I'm going to try to be Holy Spirit led, but this is amazing on the Minnesota Mayhem thing. First of all, as you and I talked about in our pre-podcast, which we always have our pre-podcast. For those of you, and Matthew, we need to start recording the pre-podcast because there might be some good stuff that we could throw that would make our podcast even better. But Andrew and I solve most of the world's problems before we go online as we get ready to talk here. But it was only a couple weeks ago we were focusing on the biggest example of public fraud in the history of America. And now estimates are up to $20 billion in fraud. This is all under Governor Walz and Mayor Fry's leadership over that city. Of course, it extended over about a decade. But it's interesting, we talk about media optics, everything is viewed through the political lens, like what are the optics for this party or that party? And it's crazy because it is like war. And I just want to say this out loud. We are in war, an ideological war that is going to quickly be spilling over into more if we don't get a handle on this. But we talked about optics. It's interesting to me that whoever controls the news media cycle, gets to kind of turn everybody's attention away from Exhibit A to the new issue. And so this was talk about optics. This is a bad optic. If you're a Democrat, if you're the former vice presidential nominee, Governor Walz, and you're seeing all this gross fraud exposed, all these Somali daycares. This is terrible optics for you. So it's interesting to me that everything now has shifted to, bad ICE. And these terrible, terrible people that are murdering citizens and on and on and on and on and on. All of a sudden, the Somali refugee daycare crisis, the fraud, all this stuff disappears. But it's interesting that it disappears, and now the shift focuses in the very same city that all the fraud's occurring. Is that a coincidence to you? Am I being too out there? Am I pushing conspiracy theories, or is this not go hand in glove?
Yeah, and we know the fraud issue is legitimate because Tim Walz is no longer running for governor. So something legitimate is happening, and I think Trump just tweeted about more of this corruption cases coming. My whole thing is like, what's taking so long? Let's bring some of these facts, some of these data, some of these indictments, so we can read it and see what's actually happening.
Yeah, no, I get it, and we don't want to rush to conclusions that are unsupported. But you brought up a good point here. I think there's a larger network at work. First of all, I don't know that I could say this more strongly than I'm going to say this right now. We cannot despise the mainstream media enough. I am so sick and tired of the constant leftist progressive leaning, where you cannot even get, you automatically know they're going to sympathize for the rioter. They're not going to sympathize for the American young lady that was raped or murdered by illegal folks in our country. They don't have any, there's no protest for those people. They're not burning down buildings in honor of any of those folks that lost their lives in most hideous ways. And the media always sides to the person with a rap sheet a mile long. They try to make a martyr out of people that should not have anybody celebrating their behavior or the way they live their life. But I thought this was interesting. This is a post on X. Once you realize this, it says it's quite simple. The Democratic Party, Antifa, is the military wing, and we see them on the streets right now. The judiciary is the lawfare wing. The Southern Poverty Law Association is the targeting wing. They're the ones that call everybody fascists and everything else. Legacy Media is the propaganda wing. Soros and NGO networks are the financial wing. And education/Hollywood is the indoctrination wing. Simple. I mean, when I read that, that's exactly what I'm seeing happening. You know, we talked last week, too, about the folks that entered the church and disrupted the service. And the Justice Department acted quickly and, strongly and put out arrest warrants for like 5 other individuals. I know two of them were actually arrested. But a judge stopped the arrest warrants and said there was no merit to the case or whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and part of it, of course, was Don Lemon, who was the CNN anchor, and his producer and some of these other folks. Again, so now you have a leftist politicized judiciary that comes in and stops law enforcement once again. I mean, we're trying to promote justice. We're trying to say what you're doing is wrong and you shouldn't be allowed to do that. And then you have a judiciary that's impeding the process as well. So to your point, we have governors not cooperating. We have the mayors not cooperating. There's no law enforcement here in any of these situations walking hand in glove with ICE. We're actually letting criminals out of prison back onto the streets so that it makes ICE's job even harder. And then we have the optical side. Now we go on mainstream media and we get nothing but propaganda. So I sit back looking at all this going, you know what? We are in a battle for the heart of this nation that I think I'm not trying to be, what's the word for?
Black pill?
Yeah. It's like I'm not trying to blow things out of proportion or be inflammatory with my rhetoric. But this really is a war. Like, these people do not share our values. They have no respect for the rule of law. They're celebrated for lawlessness. They disrespect law enforcement. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And these people are not us. And I don't know how many of them are out there. I know it gets amplified by the media to make it look like it's this massive movement. I think most of America, my own 2 cents, is frankly fed up with this kind of stuff. We're disgusted with it. This looks like Minneapolis 2.0 with the buildings starting to get lit on fire and everything else. And I think most Americans are fed up with it. And I think we saw that in the last election. That's why we elected a president who largely ran on a law enforcement platform. So anyway, I thought that pretty much covered it. I mean, we got every wing covered by the Democratic Party pushing an agenda that is, in my opinion, clearly anti-American. So let's talk about the latest casualty here. And I get it. You're talking about this as being a little bit nuanced. You look at how did this happen? And again, it's a tragic, unnecessary loss of life. The gentleman's name, Alex Peretti. The left is turning him into a martyr again. But this isn't that complicated. You and I talked about this. This is not that hard. What needs to happen? If you're to fix the situation, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of emotions to this, and you make people a martyr. The video from one angle doesn't look good for the Border Patrol. But as I took a step back, I'm like, the police officers should be out there the Minnesota police officer should be out there supporting what ICE is doing, because that's their enforcement federal law, which is passed on the federal level.
Okay, so just for clarification, so why aren't the police out there working with federal law enforcement to remove? Now, again, these are operations where they're going after criminal, illegal aliens in our country, criminals. These are people who have committed crimes that have hurt people. Why wouldn't the police be out there saying, how can we help you?
Yeah, well, it's because it's sanctuary city policy, the mayor, the governor, and
again, our sanctuary cities, are those legal under the United States form of government and Constitution? I mean, are you able just to opt out of being part of the United States of America?
If you can just, basically usurp federal laws, then I would say Indiana should usurp some federal laws. I would say Texas should usurp some federal laws. I mean,
if that happens, you don't have a United States of America. You don't have a republic. You have just absolute chaos. You have people just revolting over anything that they don't like. And so again, we have sanctuary cities. We got governors that are telling people to stand down. We got mayors that are calling ICE thugs and all this kind of stuff. I mean, using all that kind of language. So you're saying, first of all, if we just got the local police involved doing their jobs and supporting federal law enforcement, that would clear up a lot of confusion. What else is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, so again, and you have people's basically antagonizing these border agents. It just becomes very complex and very, very difficult situations, and I think the problem is you're trying to enact an operation to arrest people who shouldn't be here, or and then at the same time you also have to kind of keep the crowd and people who are hostile to you. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, in the middle of all that, they probably did not. The Border Patrol probably didn't act in the precision that we can by looking at slow motion through the video. What happened? I don't know. I don't want to speak to what happened because there's so many questions that's not answered. I don't know. There's so many things. I mean, I watched as many videos as I can see, that night. But again, I'm not there. I don't know I don't know what actually happened. I would love to, for an investigation, tell us what actually happened. But overall, when I take a step back, when I think about it objectively, I'm like, none of this should be happening if the police were out there pushing the crowd back, allowing the federal agents to do what they need to be doing. That's my opinion to all of this.
I love what Matt Walsh says. Matt has a way of just shooting straight. If you dress up in your militia costume, arm yourself, and then go out into the street with the express intent of interfering with law enforcement, and then fight back when they try to arrest you, and then you end up dead, you only have yourself to blame for that whole series of deliberate and insanely idiotic decisions. I mean, this guy's like a parenting failure. You're like, what did your parents teach you? What are you doing? How can you be so foolish to do what you just did and then expect to come away from the incident unscathed? Again, it's a tragic that you died, but you died from being stupid. That's why you died. I like here the Heritage Foundation. They said you have the right to peacefully protest. You do not have the right to obstruct law enforcement operations, which is exactly what's going on here. With certain exceptions, you have the right to carry a firearm. You do not have the right to lay hands on law enforcement or resist arrest. If you obstruct law enforcement, lay hands on an officer, or resist arrest while carrying a firearm, you endanger the lives of law enforcement personnel and increase the likelihood of being met with lethal force. This isn't complicated, though some on the left and the right with ulterior motives would like it to be. I get it. There's some nuanced things, but I mean, this is just like pretty straightforward. When I pull up to a situation, I see a police car blocking the road, lights going on, people out, and the officer's telling me, please, turn around, this road is closed. I don't plow through the officer. I don't try to run up and pick up the guy that got knocked to the ground or interfere with what's going on. That is a live operation. Like, nobody in their right mind does this. And then all of a sudden we have these folks that are, social justice warriors and somehow trying to be celebrated when you're absolutely just being ridiculous. And for the mayor of that city, for the governor of that state, to stand down the police and to celebrate these people, they have created literally a powder keg of folks that are unhinged. And I would say, the guy that died, I've seen multiple pictures online. You pointed out earlier that they could be AI deep fakes, and we certainly want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But the problem is these people that are in these circles, that's not a fake to them. They celebrate that lifestyle. This, in fact, if you look at a lot of the people in that movement, they're all behind that type of cross-dressing behavior and every other kind of bizarre thing. So, all right, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I didn't look that deeply.
I'm just saying, these people have some mental issues that goes deeper. And what gets me is, I'm looking here. This was a Fox News article, but you're looking at what they're putting online. They're using language like this. This is the Party for Socialism and Liberation. These are commies. The network behind this group is all communists. Expand the general strike. That is communist language. Encouraging the call for a general strike is classic communist tactic. Refers to coordinated mass work stoppages aimed at paralyzing civil society to force political and economic outcomes. This is Marx's heavy-handed behavior. It's what happened in that church. We're going to come in, we're going to come in again, and we're going to come in. I mean, they were bold about this. We're going to keep coming into this church until we force you. We're going to shut it all down. We're going to create total chaos. You're not going to be able to do what you do until you listen to what we have to say and conform to it. We saw this during all the BLM riots and everything, where people were going up to people eating restaurants on the streets of Washington, D.C., saying, say Black Lives Matter, or else. And they created all kinds of chaos and threatened people and everything else. So what I'm concerned about is when you look at the evidence here, and this is not AI deep fake. They've got pictures of vehicles with license plates. This is all on their network. They've got here a highly suspected, confirmed ICE. What's the make of the car? What's the body of the car? What's the model of the car? And they got emojis here telling you what to do. And this is a well coordinated effort. And I think J.D. Vance was pointing out, who's funding all of this? This is not happening by a bunch of, purple-haired cross-dressers that are out on the streets. Like, do these people have jobs, for crying out loud? This is what I'm going. Who's paying for all this? Because it's very, very well coordinated. And obviously it's rooted, and what I want to point out, is rooted in Marxism, communism, socialism. It's all the same bird. I get concerned about that because we said right now the only benefit is it's 30 below zero. But what happens as we move towards spring and summer? Is this going to be, up to the midterms? Is this going to just intensify?
Yeah, and studies, I've read somewhere, studies showing that when there's chaos in the nation, it doesn't matter who's caused the chaos, the incumbent tends to lose. That's exactly what happens in 2020. One of the major, people don't feel safe. They feel like it's erratic. They feel like the nation's in turmoil, and people tend to blame the incumbent. So there's even a strategy behind that. I mean, think about 2020. Look what happened in 2020. They were pulling out all the stops to make sure that Trump was going to lose in 2020. And part of that was the summer.
Yeah. And this, I guess I want to say to all of our listeners too, the worst thing you can do at a time like this is be timid and be somebody that seeks peace at any cost. No, you don't seek peace at any cost. Do you want to continue to live like this? I just want to remind our listeners, have we forgotten what it was like under the Biden-Harris administration, all the liberties that we lost? I mean, we had people that were peacefully protesting. I'm talking about simply praying, not yelling, screaming, spitting in people's faces, driving over people, trying to hit them with cars. I'm talking about Christians out in front of abortion clinics, peacefully praying and being arrested by the Biden administration and put in jail. Can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot? I mean, if they were applying the law the way they did to peaceful pro-life protesters, to these criminals that are out here agitating and creating all kinds of chaos, spitting in people's faces. Imagine if I came up 1 inch from your face and was yelling at the top of my lungs and calling you every name in the book. I mean, I can't imagine some of the restraint from these people.
Well, I think the analogy will be a bunch of right-wing pro-life protesters storm into a abortion clinic, interrupting their operations, getting in the face of the patients and the doctors. That will be the comparable analogy.
Yeah, spitting in the face of the doctors.
Yelling at these doctors, condemning these doctors. I mean, that's basically what they did. And recording all of this. Those guys were, and under the Biden administration, those guys would be in jail immediately. There would be no judge coming to save them.
Absolutely. And I guess, some of the truths coming out about what happened in that church, there were people blocking parents from going upstairs to get their children out of, the children's classroom space. Yeah. There were, I use the term agitators because that's what they use. Screaming at these kids, say your parents are fascists. I mean, I'm a parent. If something like that happened in our church and someone's blocking our children's area and yelling things like that, you're putting things in the hands of people who are going, okay, if the government's not going to create an atmosphere where there's peace and true justice and order and civility, then we're going to take it into our own hands, because you're not going to do that to our kids and you're not going to act that way on our private property. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just putting myself in these highly charged things. Like if someone's yelling at in the face of my kids or something like that, I'm probably going to handle the situation.
I will throw them out. I will physically try to throw them out. And I'm actually shocked.
I would knock them out and then you could drag them out.
Yeah, I'm just surprised there's no physical altercation in that case that happens. I'm shocked that there was no physical altercation, and maybe it was wisdom to not get into that because when you put my kids in danger, I mean, there's a greater law than I don't even know what policy to follow at that point, and the fact that these guys are not in jail. So
that's the other thing. That is a travesty of justice that these people can act like this and not be placed in jail immediately. Because again, I think we have to clarify between peaceful protest and what's happening here, where they're impeding a lawful, criminal prosecution.
The prosecution, the law that protects. I didn't know about this. The law that protects abortion clinics from people going to an abortion clinic or do whatever. The FACE Act is supposed to protect you. Again, the same analogy. If you're saying that protest is fine and those people shouldn't go to jail, then pro-lifers, I'm not even saying they're Christians, because a lot of non-Christian pro-lifers can go into clinics and protest the same way in the abortion clinics, and they should be able to get away with it too. That's what justice or equality really looks like. So just from objective case, if you guys said that's legal, this should be legal too in an abortion clinic. And I'm not saying pro-lifers should go in abortion clinics and just stop operations and whatever you're doing. I'm not saying that's right either. But someone should go to jail for this because they need to send a message. But here's what disturbed me is the liberals are lockstep in a cultic religious adherence to worship. That's why you got judges and financiers, whereas the right is completely splintered. And tell you, I think one of the reasons why the right is splintered is because right now don't have a religious cause. Because the right is leaning very secular because of many different reasons. And the right is splintered. We don't have a religious force behind, a cultic force, for better or for worse. We don't have that behind us, whereas the left is lockstep in everything they're doing. Yeah, that's, to me, the difference.
We talked about this, that the left embraces violence as a means to an end. The tearing down of the system, the destruction of capitalism, the breakup of the family, the attack on the Church of Jesus Christ, on religion in general. They hate all of that because all of those things stand in the way of their new utopian, Marxist ideal that is proven 1,000 times over never to work, only to produce bloodshed and even greater tyranny and authoritarianism. So anyway, these are the things that are the difference between us. And I think you're right. There's got to be a transcendent purpose for your cause. Otherwise, it gets splintered in a million different directions, and it does not have the moral, moral strength, I guess, to stand against opposition. This is why people roll over. When things start getting crazy, like you said, they'll blame who's ever currently in office. They'll roll over. They will not stand up because they're sheep, and they just want it. They want a nice, quiet place to lay down. And again, if you live for that type of complacency and peace at all costs, and you're willing to compromise the truth, if you can't see past the end of your nose and past the end of your own comfort, you're going to be in a really, really nasty place in the not too distant future. Yeah. And that's why I think that the church, people got to see this. The church has got to lead the way. These things, the biggest threat to our liberties is bad government. It is leadership that doesn't do their job, or leadership that doesn't operate from a biblical worldview. And for people to say, well, the church shouldn't really talk about those things or shouldn't get involved in those things. Again, what a short-sighted, dangerous position. And I just want to remind people, hey, folks, a few years ago, we were on the precipice of all kinds of heavy-handed tyranny. We went through all of that, again, through COVID and through some of this ridiculous leftist, progressive nonsense, crazy, mentally ill policies that were pushed on us. And it's like we have got, with a midterm coming up, not that our solutions to all of our problems are political only, but I'm telling you, our government provides at least a wall of protection from the barbarians completely overrunning society. We've got to do our job as a church to obviously make disciples, win people to Christ, make disciples, but that includes teaching about our liberties and our foundational truths, which all come from the Scripture. So, I just want to encourage us, let's get our head out of the sand. I'm not speaking to our people because I think, we hit on this quite often, but the church as a whole cannot just simply be pulled into the false optics and the propaganda of the media and all of a sudden start, getting weak on this whole law and justice thing. I mean, open borders was going to absolutely destroy America. And thank God we have an adult in the president's office right now who's willing to do the hard thing. Because this is hard. Politicians by nature don't touch these things because they're messy and they're hard. Thank God for a president who's trying to who did shut our borders and who's trying to get the bad folks out of our country. We should be celebrating this, not fighting it tooth and nail. So anyway, I applaud our president. We should pray for our president. And will mistakes be made along the process? Yep, there's probably some mistakes. But overall, when you look at the list of the people that they have captured and are deporting from this country, we should be celebrating our law enforcement officers and supporting our president and his policy.
It's much easier to squeeze the toothpaste out of the toothpaste container. Now we're trying to push the toothpaste back in.
Yeah.
And it's going to be messy. And we think it's going to be neat and clean. We want the results. American people want the results. That's why we voted in 2024. Yep. But I don't think most Americans are ready for how messy it is to reverse or correct a little bit of the mass immigration we had in the 4 years of Biden's administration. And most people just don't want the mess of it. They don't want the news media. They don't want the mess of it.
Remember the gaslighting? We need to secure our border. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris, our border is secure. And we're watching videos of people streaming into the country. And she never even went and visited the border. And that was her job. She was the border czar. I mean, and people would actually say on the evening news, our border is secure. I mean, And you're sitting there going, how did 20 million people get into our country illegally if the border was secure? And we're seeing these people bust. Remember that? Busing them in the night? Remember when they got bused to Martha's Vineyard? And then all of a sudden, man, we solved that problem in a hurry in Martha's Vineyard. I mean, we saw the hypocrisy of the left. We saw the gaslighting. They made us look like we were crazy, calling us all kinds of names for simply questioning what was obvious. And it's like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live under that again. And the solution to all this, in my opinion, is a recovery of the first principle called the rule of law. You might not like this administration. You might not like deporting people in your community or whatever that you might have a relationship with. I don't know. But we have a system in place that's the best system on planet Earth to address these grievances. You can run for office. You can lobby your elected officials. You can change laws, but you can't do this. This is total mayhem and chaos. That is not protected under our Constitution. That's not who we are as an American republic. So again, I'm all for, hey, you're passionate, great. You believe in your cause, great. You need to do it in a proper way, and you're not. And that's the concern that I have. We've got to get back to the rule of law, or I believe we're going to see some vigilanteism. We're already seeing it on the left, but people are going to just start protecting themselves. And isn't it interesting? Again, the irony of all ironies. These are the people that are advocating government confiscation of all guns and getting rid of our Second Amendment freedoms, and they're showing up armed. Which again, the hypocrisy of it all is amazing. But I could go on and on and on because the left is full of hypocrisy right now, and their positions don't make sense. But this is what we have over and over and over again. So anyway, I'm deeply concerned about the rent-a-mob that we have going on right now. Interesting enough, just pointing out facts. In Memphis, to your point earlier, the police worked with federal law enforcement agencies. Crime in Memphis went down 50%. This should be like a bipartisan issue. We should be celebrating this. We all should want crime to go down. We all should want fraud to go down and waste to go down, like we saw with Doge. Who in their right mind would not be in favor of getting rid of criminals from your community so people aren't being robbed and killed and raped and everything else, and who would not be for exposing all this corruption that's going on financially, unless you're benefiting from the system, and that's, I think, exactly what's happening.
I saw a report that the murder rates in the United States is way down. I forgot the actual statistics, way down. But again, that don't get the news. Good news don't get the news. Someone says when a plane lands and no crash happens, million times, a year, whatever, I don't know the stats.
Right.
No one talks about it.
Right.
It's when the plane crashes, this way everyone talks about it. And this, again, is playing on emotional and optics. And I get sucked into it, too. I was doom scrolling the video about everything, and I had to take a step back and said, okay, forget the emotions for a second. Objectively look at what's really happening. This shouldn't happen in the first place. Law and order should be happening. In the greater context, was everyone perfect? No, but in the greater context, what should have happened and who really is to be blamed. So, again, my encouragement for everyone's like, let's look at the big picture. Where's America going? What are we establishing? What are we doing? If murder rate is plummeting in all these cities, that's good news. We should be talking about that more, right? We should actually emphasize that, but we're not talking about that.
Remember when Washington, D.C. was a cesspool of crime and violence, and Trump sent federal, law enforcement into D.C. to clean it up. Mm-hmm. And he did. And again, instead of celebrating, he was viewed as tyrannical, fascist, and everything else. I like what Dinesh D'Souza says here. I don't agree with him on everything, but I like this. He says the Nazi platform spells it out. State control of banks, industry, healthcare, education, and the churches. Does this sound right-wing? No. It's closer to AOC, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Mamdani. This is classic leftist behavior, and which is what we're seeing more and more and more of: bigger government control. That is not what the right is known for.
Fascism is saying, hey, if you don't get a shot, you lose your job. If you don't get a shot, you cannot go eat in a restaurant. Some people can have work. Some people can't go to work. You got to stay in your house. You have to stay in your house. That's the most fascist thing I've ever heard, that I've ever experienced in my life. And who produces that? Not Trump.
And you saying that gets my blood boiling again. I mean, we have got so many people just in our own church family who had to watch loved ones die in isolation because they couldn't even go care for a mom or dad or family member because some bureaucrat made a ruling. I mean, my blood just gets going over and over again on this kind of stuff.
It's so interesting because you have someone who's impotent and projects weakness, but his policy, I'm talking about Biden, but whose policy is fascist, and then you have someone who projects strength, but people don't judge them on their policy. People judge them on their perception. Again, because
on their personalities.
Because we're being emotional about it versus being objective and look at what's happening. Do I agree with everything Trump's doing? That's not what I'm saying at all. But to compare it to previous administration and call him fascist, and I'm just like, okay, like where do you, what do you call that? You got to define fascism for me, buddy.
And now you're looking at a party that got handily just beat up in the last election cycle because their ideas are terrible. They've had nothing to run on except we're against Trump. That's all we've heard. We saw all the lawfare just to try to keep him out. How many different court, stupid lawsuits that were brought against him, none of which had any merit or substance. And we're in a situation now where I see that Schumer, who's trying to be as progressive as he can be so he doesn't, lose his seat to AOC, Schumer is now saying that they're not going to pass the budget.
Continue,
because they're not going to support murder. So now you got the Senate minority leader, or is he majority leader?
Minority. He's still minority.
Senate minority leader who is basically calling federal law enforcement murderers. I mean, this is the kind of vitriolic language, again, and rhetoric that just stirs the pot. And you get these unhinged people like the guy that was dressing in high heels as an emergency nurse. You get these types of folks that are useful idiots. Yeah, that's the communist language, not mine. Useful idiots that go about doing all this crazy, stupid stuff to create a scene that they can use as for optics and then use their propaganda arm, the mainstream media, to create mayhem, and they bring about the ultimate goals to bring about cultural change and transformation in the Marxist utopian view of things. And so it makes me just want to puke, because here you got Booker and Schumer, they're going to play hardball with Trump over ICE. When you saw too that picture, it was Barack Obama who awarded Tom Homan with the forget what the important medal was. It was the highest honor that government can bestow upon its citizens for what he did to deport illegals in our country under the Obama administration. This is the same guy Obama celebrated that now the Democrats are wanting to demonize. I mean, again, the hypocrisy is just crazy. Like, there's zero credibility. And what was that you were talking about institutional confidence?
Davos. During Davos, how one of the main things is no one has confidence in institutions anymore. Larry Fink himself said it, basically.
And you wonder why,
Yeah.
Duh. You see all the corruption, and you see all the doublespeak, and you see all the hypocrisy, and all the chameleon-esque behavior where you're changing colors given what the political environment is. And it's all about survival. I saw where at least they're doing an investigation. AOC came into office broke, and now she's worth $44 million.
You're talking about now AOC, Ilmar.
Yeah. Well, they're all in the same category. The congresswoman from Minnesota. How do you come here with nothing and all of a sudden, after a few years, you're worth $40+ million? This is what the hardworking American person that's trying to make ends meet is a little bit frustrated about. And I think it's time to put that frustration into a positive outcome in terms of making sure you're registered to vote, voting for good people. If there aren't good people, then find good people and get them running. And get engaged in what it means to run this republic. It takes work to run a republic, to keep it healthy, and it's time for us all to roll up our sleeves and get involved. So maybe that's my pep talk from today. I hope we have different things to talk about next Thursday. And then the mayhem in Minnesota, but I don't feel like it's going to be going away anytime soon. So anyway, continue to keep that situation in your prayers. And most of all, let's stay engaged, be alert, be vigilant, and we can be part of the solution. So we'll look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday.